Okay, this is part 2 of our chapter 2 review packet. So numbers 10 through 13 say to evaluate the expression when x equals 5/8 and y equals negative 5/3. So here this might look a little tricky because there are some variables, x's and y's here, but really what we need to do as our first step always when we see problems like this is to plug in the values that we are given. So number 10 says x plus y. So we see this plus sign, so we know it's going to be an addition problem. Now we need to plug in what x and y equal. So here, x is 5/8, and will be throughout these 4 problems. And y is negative 5/3, so I'm going to put that in parentheses. We're going to add negative 5/3. Now when we are adding fractions, again, like we always do, we need to get a common denominator. So the common denominator here ends up being 24. So I'm going to multiply my first fraction, the numerator, by 3, denominator by 3. For my second fraction, I'm going to multiply my numerator by 8 and my denominator by 8 as well. So my new fraction will read 15 24ths plus my negative 40 over 24. So now we have our common denominators. So we can combine our numerators. We would have 15 plus negative 40 over 24. And when we combine those two numerators together, we have to decide if it's going to be a negative number or a positive number. We have more negatives here, so it's going to be negative. And it ends up being negative 25 over 24. So again, now we simplify. We always are going to simplify with our fractions. And we see how many times 24 goes into 25. It will be 1 time with 1 left over. So negative 1 and 1/24 there. Making sure we don't forget our negative sign. That can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes we want to forget that. You have to make sure you carry that negative sign to the very end. Now number 11 is very similar to 10. There's 1x, 1y. Now this is a subtraction problem. And we start with y. So y again is still negative 5/3 minus x, which is still, again, 5/8. So we need our common denominator. It is still 24. Nothing's changed there. So my first fraction is going to be multiplied numerator and denominator by 8. Second fraction, the numerator and denominator will be multiplied by 3. So again, my new fraction is going to read negative 40 over 24. And those should look familiar because we did do these in number 10, minus 15 over 24. So then we have negative 40 minus 15 over 24. I'm going to actually do a little mid-step. Some of you guys do not need to do this. You've told me this before, but I do want to show you how I'm getting this, the difference here, the final answer for my numerator. It's just like saying negative 40 plus negative 15. A lot of you guys sometimes want to go in the more positive direction. We're starting with a negative number and we're subtracting more positives away from it. So it's going to become more negative. So my numerator, when I combine those two numbers, will be negative 55 over 24. Again, my answer is going to be negative, so I'm going to write the negative sign down right away. 24 can go into 55 a total of 2 times, with 7 left over, so it's negative 2 and 7/24. Box that answer. 12 is negative 2x plus y. So the difference here is there is a coefficient or a number. It's a number that's right in front of a variable. So that negative 2 is a coefficient here. So we're going to plug in my values for x and y. Now I have a number and a variable. Because they are right next to each other, that means there is multiplication. So we have a number and a variable next to each other. When I plug in my value for x, I'm going to keep it in parentheses. So I'm going to have negative 2, and then x is still 5/8 plus y, which is negative 5/3. Now, negative 2 and 5/8, that means to multiply. So I'm actually going to make this negative 2 over 1, so I see it as 2 fractions, because we know how to multiply fractions pretty easily. All we do is multiply numerators and multiply denominators. So negative 2 times 5 is negative 10/8 plus negative 5/3. Now it's another addition problem. We need to get our common denominators. So again, it'll be 24. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Hopefully you guys are always checking to make sure that you're getting a common denominator when you're adding or subtracting fractions. That is always our first step to look for. So my new fractions will be negative 30 over 24 plus negative 40 over 24. So I'm going to combine my numerators. Negative 30 plus negative 40 over 24. And I get negative 70 over 24. And that again is an improper fraction. My answer will be negative, so I'm going to put a negative sign there. 24 goes into 70 a total of 2 times with 22 left over. So I'm still not done yet. Hopefully you guys notice that I can actually simplify this fraction. So I'm going to write exactly what I'm dividing by. So make sure you guys remember to show me that step as well. Don't just try and simplify. I want to see what you're simplifying by. So negative 2 and 11/12 is going to be my final answer there. Now 13 looks a little bit weird as well. We have a coefficient again, so 3 times x, or in this case 3 times 5/8 will be the first part. But then we have this y here, and this is the absolute value of y. And now remember, the absolute value is the distance that number is from 0 on a number line, and we know that distance is always positive. So whatever the value of y is needs to be positive when we find that absolute value. So again, I'm going to start by plugging in my two values, and since I have this 3 times a fraction, I'm going to actually just write it 3 over 1 right away, times 5/8, and then plus, I'm going to keep an absolute value of negative 5/3. So what that's asking me to do right now is to say, okay, if I were to plot negative 5/3 on a number line, how far away is that from 0? So I'm going to keep this multiplication here and actually evaluate what this absolute value is, and it would be positive 5/3. Remember, our absolute value will always be positive since we're talking about distance. So then I'm going to worry about now my multiplication. I multiply straight across, 15 over 8 plus 5/3, and now it looks like a nice easy addition problem with fractions. So again, common denominator, and it stayed common throughout all 4 of these. It will be 24 always here, 8 and 3, 24. So my new fraction will be 45 24ths plus 15 24ths. I'm going to combine my numerators. So I will have 60. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to go back and erase this. It's going a little too quick. And I need to multiply my second fraction by 8. And I will end up getting, for my numerator here, my second fraction will be 40. So now I'm combining 45 and 40, which will be 85 over 24. Now I want to make that an improper, or from an improper fraction to a mixed number. 24 goes into 85 a total of 3 whole times, and I have 13 left over, so that's my new numerator. And 24 will be my denominator. Now I can't simplify that, so it'll be 3 and 13 24ths. On to our next page. These are more word problems. Yay, word problems. 14 says you spend 3 2/3 hours hiking. So I'm going to underline that because I know that's important. And then we have an additional, so I think plus right away, 3/4 hour to rest. How much time did you spend hiking and resting? So I want to find the total. When I think total, I think addition. So I'm going to do 3 2/3 plus 3/4. So I'm going to change my first fraction into a mixed number, and I will end up getting 11/3 plus 3/4. Since I am adding fractions, I need a common denominator, and here my denominator should be 12, so I'm going to multiply numerator and denominator of my first one by 4, numerator and denominator of my second fraction by 3. And my new fraction here will be 44 over 12 plus 9 over 12. I'll combine my numerators, 44 plus 9, which is 53, and then 12 will be my denominator still. Now I'm not going to say I spend 53/12 hiking and resting, so I do want to make that an improper, or from an improper fraction to a mixed number. So 12 goes into 53, a total of 4 times evenly, and we have 5 left over. 12 is still my denominator. So I'm going to make this a complete sentence. 4/5 hours Remember, word problem, word answer. So 4 and 5/12 hours were spent hiking and resting. And we really want to be as specific as possible when we are answering our word problems. If we're answering and we find some crazy answer, hopefully we think, well, maybe I made a mistake, so I'm going to go back and check my work. When we're specific, we know exactly what we're answering. We know we are answering the correct question instead of just writing a number down and moving on. So make sure you are specific when you're labeling and answering your question. Make it a complete sentence there. Now part B says, how much more time did you spend hiking than resting? How much more time? So we're comparing, and to find the difference here, we're going to want to subtract. So hiking, we spent 3 and 2/3 hours. I'm going to subtract 3/4 that was spent resting. And I want to find out how much more time I spent hiking. Now I can tell I spent more time hiking than resting, but I want to know how much more. So again, I'm going to make this an improper fraction using my big C method, and I have 11/3 minus 3/4. Need a common denominator again, so I'm going to show that I'm multiplying first fraction, numerator, denominator by 4. Second one, numerator and denominator by 3. My new fraction here will be 44/12 minus 9/12. Now I'm doing 44 minus 9, which is 35/12. And here 12 goes in to 35 2 times with 11 left over, so 2 and 11/12 more hours. And I'm going to say 2 and 11/12 more hours were spent hiking than resting. So I've officially 100% answered that question. I'm going to box my answer. Now, 15 seems a little odd. It says find a repeating decimal between -2 and 1/3 and -2 and 1/5. In order to do that, off the top of our heads, we usually don't know a lot of repeating decimals. So I'm going to compare these two. I'm going to put them with a common denominator. And with my fractions here, I'm actually going to keep them mixed numbers. And I'm going to get a common denominator of 15. So I'm going to multiply the first fraction by 5, top numerator and denominator. Second fraction by 3. So I have -2 and 5/15 and -2 and 3/15. So I'm actually going to find out, well, what should be in the middle between those two numbers, and I'll have -2 and 4/15. Now if I were to divide 4 by 15, I would get a repeating decimal there. And we'll talk more about repeating decimals. When you will start to notice, hopefully, thirds are repeating decimals. So 1/3 and 2/3. 1/3 is 0.3 repeating, and 2/3 is 0.6 repeating. So you'll start seeing those more common repeating decimals as we work more with these numbers, and you'll start to be able to identify them very quickly without having to do all of the long division. Now, again, we're going to stop this video and we're going to move on to part 3. So continue grading. I know this is a longer process, but this does help. Make sure you're grading and checking and fixing any problems you need to fix. So go ahead and stop this video and start part 3 to finish grading your chapter review.